All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Yes, it's so good to be together. My name is Caleb, one of the leaders here, and just want to say if this is your first Sunday, we're delighted to have you with us. Welcome to James Island Christian. And kids, can I get a whoop whoop? No. Kids, can I get a whoop whoop? There we go. That's it. That's what I needed. So we've just read this incredible story of the Transfiguration, and I want all of you to think about something for a second, especially the kids. Okay, so here's the question. Have you ever seen something that made you go, oh my word, that is way cooler than I originally thought? Like, think about that. Have you ever seen something or someone and you're like, oh my gosh, that is way cooler than I thought? Maybe it was a toy in a box and you looked at it and you were like, oh, that's okay. And then you open it up and it's like, this is incredible. Or maybe, I don't know if any of you like meeting famous people. Maybe you meet someone and you don't know they're famous. You just think they're normal, and then later you find out that they're actually famous. Has any of you had any of those experiences where you thought something was okay and it actually turned out to be incredible? Put your hand up if you've had any sort of experience. Okay, lots of you. Awesome. Well, that's kind of what happened to Jesus' friends, Peter, James, and John. See, these guys, they hanged out with Jesus. They were around him. They saw him. And they saw him do some pretty cool things. Think about all the things in the Gospels that they saw Jesus do. They saw him walk on water. They saw him heal sick people. They saw him calm storms. One time they even saw him feed thousands of people with just like a few loaves and some fish. It was crazy. But then, suddenly, they saw something that they had never seen before. Something that made them go, oh my word, Jesus is way cooler than we originally thought. We thought he was just a good person. We thought he was just a cool dude who could do some sweet miracles. But now, we actually see he's much more than all of that. He's actually God. And that's what our Bible story today is all about. Matthew 17. It's about the fact that Jesus is God. Today is all about seeing Jesus. If you're a kid or if you're an adult, it's about us seeing Jesus for who he truly is. He's not just a great teacher. He's not just a good moral example. He is God. And so here's what I'm going to need from you. We're going to keep the energy up. I'm going to ask you, who is Jesus? And I'm going to ask that 5 or 6 times throughout today's sermon. And I need all of you to respond by saying, Jesus is God. So if I say, who is Jesus? You say, Jesus is God. Come on, Chris. You know, we had it there. Okay, you got it. Jesus is God. All right, so let's back it up. Pre-transfiguration. Before the Transfiguration, we have to realize that Jesus was a pretty normal guy. All right? He looked like you and me. He wore clothes. He didn't walk around with like some glowing flashlights kind of coming out of him or some like crown that levitated above his head. Jesus was normal. He was a normal guy. In fact, all the way up until chapter 16 of Matthew, Jesus kept his identity hidden. Jeremy spoke about this last week. The identity of who Jesus really was actually hidden from the people. The people just thought he was like a prophet, like some guy that had been touched by God. But up until this point, he was really a pretty normal person. But there was one clue. There was one clue. Does anyone want to know? Anyone want to guess what the clue was? What? What is it? That is definitely a good clue. He never did anything wrong. That's it. That's good. There's another clue, and it involves water. Any other guesses? Wait, Sam, I missed it. He walked on water, yes, and he got baptized. He turned water. There's actually a lot more miracles about water than I was anticipating. I'm looking for one specific one, but I'm just going to say it. He was baptized. And that is a big clue because at the baptism, we have this profound moment of the heavens opening and God the Father speaking over his Son, saying, this is my Son with whom I'm well pleased. And so Jesus' baptism is the first clue that he is different from everyone else. But it wasn't until the transfiguration that we got to see his glory shine the brightest. And that's where we pick up our story. So I'm going to read the first five verses of Matthew 17. So follow with me. It says this: After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. Now, kids, transfigured, it's a fancy word for transformed. He was transformed. And it says this, it says that his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. Just then he appeared, and Moses and Elijah were with him, talking to him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I'll put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And while he was still speaking, this bright cloud covered them on top of the mountain, and they heard this voice from the cloud, very similar to the baptism of Jesus. And the voice said, This is my son, whom I love. This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. I don't know if that's how God sounds, but it works. So here's what happens. Jesus takes his 3 closest friends. He's going up a mountain, and then something crazy happens. He gets transformed. And you might think to yourself, okay, well, what is this transformation? What exactly happened? Very simply put, the glory and the greatness of Jesus was revealed. It was revealed in a way that showed us Jesus is God. Look at the words that the Bible uses to describe what that moment was like. There's 2 things the Bible says. White as light. That's pretty white. Look up at these lights. Everyone look at the lights. These are yellow, but imagine they're white. All right? Very bright. White as light. And it also says that he was shining like the sun. This is a big moment in the life of Jesus. We've got to realize this. This is a big moment. Remember, all we've got is the baptism. We've got all these miracles, but the miracles don't necessarily tell us that Jesus is God, because actually, there's other accounts of people doing miracles. John the Baptist was doing miracles. It's the transfiguration, this transformation of Jesus that tells us he's a little different. In fact, he's very different. And I want to show you just how different Jesus is. So I've got a backpack I'm bringing up on stage now. I want to use a flashlight to explain this. Can everyone see the flashlight? Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that this is the first time you've seen a flashlight. You've never seen a flashlight. This is the first time. And I also want to tell you that I'm not going to turn this flashlight on. But I am going to tell you how bright it is. Okay? So I'm not going to turn it on, but I'm going to tell you how bright it is. Now remember, you've never seen a flashlight before. So no matter how much I explain to you what this little thing can do, you're not going to really be able to understand. Like, just imagine, it's your first time. You're like, Caleb's holding a little cylindrical, like, black thing. What does that do? And he's telling me it shines this weird thing called light. You can't understand it. None of us can understand it. But when I turn it on, suddenly you can see the power of the light. Suddenly you can see the glory and the brilliance of the light and what it can do. You see, just like this flashlight was a flashlight even before I put it on, Jesus was God. But the transfiguration is where he turned the flashlight on. It's the moment that we see what the flashlight can do. It's the moment we can see the power, the glory, the sovereignty. It's the full revelation of the glory of God, as it will be one day in eternity. And yet, even the transfiguration, what happened on that mountain, it's like this. Quick, 1 second, because there's more coming. There's more coming, and I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. But here's the question. When Jesus put his flashlight on, and when he revealed his glory, when he showed his disciples who he really was, how did the disciples respond? Verse 6 tells us. Anyone want to shout it out? How did the disciples respond in verse 6? Did someone say something? Yes. Oh. Anyone else? Anyone? Terrified. What else? They fell down. Yes. It says, when the disciples heard this, they fell down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them and said, "Get up, don't be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. You see, what happens when you and me see Jesus for who He truly is? What actually happens? What happens when we see Jesus for who He truly is? And the answer to that question is holy fear. Holy fear. Now, kids, when you hear fear, what do we do when we fear something? We hide or what? What else? What do we do? Kids, what do we do when we fear, when we're afraid? Tell our mom and dad. Yes. What else? Pray to God. I'm looking for something else. These guys are. Say that again. We tremble, yes. Scream, run away. But this is not the type of fear that we have to have with Jesus. The fear that we have with Jesus is a holy fear. And what that means is that we actually respond to His glory by worship. We respond to the glory of Jesus with worship. When we see how amazing and powerful Jesus is, we don't want to run away. We want to run toward Him. You see, the disciples, they saw the holy glory of Jesus. They saw that Jesus was the fulfillment of the Old Testament law. That's why Moses showed up. He hadn't been on the scene for a few thousand years. The sovereignty and the power of God brings Moses into the New Testament. That's crazy. Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophets. That's why Elijah was there. Because all the prophets kept telling the people of Israel, hey, there's this guy coming. Hey, there's this guy coming. And now he's arrived, and Elijah is there to testify about the promised Messiah. The disciples saw that Jesus was the brightest light, brighter than the sun. Jesus is pure, He's holy, and He's eternal. What does that mean? It means that Jesus was alive before the world was alive. That is old. You thought your parents were old. Try Jesus. But remember, the disciples, they didn't know who Jesus really was. They didn't really recognize Him until this moment. And you know, here's the truth. Let me be honest with us. Some of us, if we're honest, we forget about Jesus too. We forget how powerful Jesus is. Not just the kids. I'm talking to all of us. We forget how powerful Jesus is. We forget how old Jesus is, that before the earth was even created, Jesus just was. And we forget that Jesus is worthy of our fear. Not just fear that runs away, but actually fear that runs towards Him in reverence, in worship. You see, we see Jesus as our friend and our teacher, sometimes a good moral person, but we forget who He is. Who is Jesus? Good job. Who is Jesus? Jesus is God. And then verse 9 through 13 tells us how the story ends. It says this: as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed His disciples, "Don't tell anyone what you've seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The disciples asked Him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come." And they did not, key word here, they did not recognize Him, but have done everything to Him that they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. And the disciples understood that He was talking about John the Baptist. So basically, Jesus is walking down the mountain with His friends, and he's having a conversation with them. And He's explaining to them that actually the world will not recognize Him. The world is not going to recognize Him. He says that John the Baptist came, and they didn't recognize him. They killed him. And in the same way, Jesus will not be recognized. And just for a moment, think about this. Why do we have a transfiguration, this crazy story? Why do we have this crazy story in Jesus' life? Think about that. We have it because Jesus is revealing who He is. He is trying to show us so that we may recognize Him. Who is Jesus? Jesus is God. Jesus is trying to show us, and the transfiguration is another clue to that. And often, you know what's really sad? Sometimes the world doesn't recognize Jesus. In fact, some of you have friends who don't recognize Jesus. This is what John chapter 1 says about this. I love this. The Gospel of John. John writes, he says, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through Him, the world did not recognize Him. He came to that which was His own, but His own did not receive Him. And yet to all who did receive Him, to those that believed in His name, He gave the right to become children of God. The world was made through Him, and yet the world didn't recognize Him. Sometimes the world doesn't recognize Jesus. Sometimes we forget to recognize Jesus. That's why when you read the Gospels, and you'll see it often, Jesus describes His ministry as, I've come to give sight to the blind. He's not just talking about physical sight, He's talking about spiritual sight. Sight in your heart, that you may see Jesus for who He truly is. How is He going to do this? How is Jesus going to allow and help the world see Him for who He truly is? The answer to that is through His resurrection. I'm going to invite the band to come up as I land with this final point. You see, it's the resurrection that helps us to see who Jesus truly is. This is what Jesus was saying to His disciples in verse 9. It says, as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, don't tell anyone what you've seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. So let's zoom out and recap. The first clue is what? Anyone remember? The first clue is the baptism. That's right. Jesus' baptism. We get a glimpse of the glory. The second clue is the transfiguration. And finally, we have the resurrection. Just like the flashlight is always there, but we couldn't see it until its power was on, Jesus was always God, but His full glory was only revealed in the resurrection. Remember, the transfiguration was just a second, quick little, I'm going to show you a little bit, I'm going to give you a glimpse. But the resurrection is amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. There's just lights everywhere. I mean, in fact, I'm going to need some help here. Can I get the gawk now? Can you guys come up? I need as many kids, teenagers. I got 90 flashlights here. I need to distribute 90 flashlights. We're gonna just see how powerful the resurrection really is here. All right, just take one. You can grab the bag. I need you to turn your flashlight on. Go sit. You can go sit back, but take your flashlight with you. Listen, we got 10. I need some adults here, man. I need some love. I need some love. Come down, people. Come down. There we go. It's important to keep your flashlight on. There we go. Come on, everyone. Come get flashlights. Okay, keep your flashlight nice and high. There we go. Awesome. What a vibe. All right. So as I close, here's what I want to say. The resurrection is the moment you and I get to see the glory of Jesus. And it's not a flashlight that turns off. It's a light that stays on. That's why Jesus is known as the light of the world. Everyone say, light of the world.
Light of the world.
Who is Jesus?
He is God.
Here's a question. What would have happened if Jesus hadn't risen from the dead? If he had not risen from the dead, here's the answer. He wouldn't have been God. It means that he would have had his own debt to pay. It means that he would have had his own sin. It's the fact that he rose from the dead that confirms that he is the Son of God. This is what Paul writes in Romans 1. This is beautiful. God promised this good news long ago. The good news is about his Son. In his earthly life, he was born into King David's family line, and he was shown to be the Son of God when he was raised from the dead by the power of the Holy Spirit. Can I invite you to stand? The cross and the resurrection, the light that stays on, is our guarantee that Jesus is the Son of God and that our debt and our sins have been paid for. And so here is our response. Jeremy's going to come up and lead us in communion. Here's what I want to respond with. The whole transfiguration is about recognizing who Jesus is. Our prayer, kids, your prayer should be, Jesus, help me to see you for who you truly are. Jesus, show me your glory. Everyone say, Jesus, help me to show me who you truly are. It's good enough. That's good enough.
That was a big sentence.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, Jeremy, come and lead us in response.